La la la, never give up making Kirblogs. Now it's Animepril 2019. So what else did you really expect? I mean, probably not much, I imagine, but I've been doing this for how many years now? Welcome everybody to Animepril 2019. I really don't know how many years I've been doing it now, but it's always fun every year. I thought I'd start things off with technically one that I've covered before in a previous Kirblog many years ago. Good old Sailor Moon. In that initial Kirblog that I did, I think it was around the time that I moved to LA, maybe, I was talking about how I had kind of become a newer fan of the series in my adulthood compared to when I was a kid. Like a bigger fan, I guess, comparatively. And but there was so little I talked about, and I think it was one of those shorter, like, compact ones that I just did myself. And so much has happened. I've seen so much more of the show. And of course, obviously, the big difference here is the fact that by this point, I've had the lovely opportunity of getting to work on the show. Of course, Viz Media has been going back and redubbing the original 90s series, and with this new uncut dub at Studiopolis, which I had the lovely pleasure of getting to voice Pegasus in the redub of Sailor Moon Supers. And of course, they're also working on Sailor Moon Crystal as well, which has been a little bit of a pause between before anything new with that has happened. But yeah, so since my experience, both first and second hand, has changed so much, I figured it'd be fun to kind of dive into this with a fresher perspective. And I won't even preface with the whole, like, I'm probably going to repeat things you've heard about before, because I'll just assume you haven't seen that ancient first Kirblog that I did or whatever. I think I drew myself as Tuxedo Mask or something. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, I guess just to kick things off, I'll go into my sort of general, my general experiences with Sailor Moon as a kid when it was first airing on TV in the U.S., before I get into the specifics about working on Sailor Moon Supers and all that and everything, although I'm sure I'll get into some of that stuff in terms of watching it. Like many people, I saw it airing early on back in the day. I think it was just like in syndication. I cannot for the life of me remember what channel it was on, really, like, way in the beginning. Most of my experience was seeing it later on Toonami when they were airing. I think most of S and Supers during that point in time. But I was kind of catching just intermittently different episodes of the first couple of seasons. So I got enough of kind of like my experience, weirdly enough, with like Tenchi Muyo, where I just kind of saw bits and pieces of episodes of the first Tenchi Muyo and then Tenchi Universe, and then by the time Tenchi in Tokyo came out, I like knew who all the characters were. That was kind of the same thing with the first couple seasons of Sailor Moon, where I had intermittently seen bits of the Queen Beryl Dark Kingdom stuff early on, and catching. I think I came in around when Nephrite was the villain, and when he passed away, and I was like, oh, okay, well, all right, this show is a little different than usual. I think I want to say maybe by that point I had started seeing Pokemon, so like I was becoming familiar with anime. I think yeah. By that time, I had definitely seen Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z, so like I knew what anime was, and I knew that it was an anime by that time. So it was very early on in that kind of time in my life, like mid to late 90s and everything. But so I saw bits and pieces of that, and I caught a little bit of the the alien Makaiju tree little filler arc thing. I don't think I ever actually saw any of the real part of the R storyline with like Prince Demond and all that. You know what? I do recall seeing like a commercial for it when I think when it was on Toonami or something, because I remember seeing Prince Demond like fawning over Sailor Moon and being all weird and creepy or whatever, and I was like, oh, I guess he's the new villain. So I remember seeing him, but I didn't really know too much about what was going on with that season, because I didn't see any of those episodes. But then I started tuning in a little bit more for real when S started airing, and by that point, of course, they had the introduction of Sailor Pluto and Uranus and Neptune, and they had the Witches 5 villains. Around when I started following the episodes, because I guess they were just kind of airing before or after whatever else I was watching on Toonami, probably Dragon Ball at the time. I came in around when Mimette was the at the time villain of the S storyline. and loved her. I was learning very quickly that I was like, wow, I really like the villains of the show, because I didn't get to know too much about the Dark Kingdom characters, Queen Beryl and all of them, or the Alien Twins and the Dark Moon Kingdom and whatever, all those characters. But the Witches 5 and seeing Mimette and then some of the others, and Dr. Tomoe as well, being just absolutely insane. I was like, oh, I like them. And I by that point I gotten adjusted to who each of the Sailor Guardians were and everything. And actually, weirdly enough, I know that a lot of American fans, at least from my conversations with people, really didn't like Chibiusa at the time. And I get that. I get that, because in general, when you have like I'm the kid's window into this universe character, I'm supposed to represent the kid kind of inserting themselves into the story sort of thing. I know that sometimes that can sort of go awry and come off as like, talking down to the audience or whatever, but I found her really funny and likable, and I never really had a problem with her. I mean, I also I liked Jade and Jackie Chan Adventures, and like I liked Gohan and DBZ, so like I not that I like identified with the kid insert character or whatever in shows, but I thought that they were interesting to me like at the time. So I always kind of liked Chibiusa. I never really had an issue with her. I think also people have grown to like her now, like later on, comparatively. At least I would like to hope so. And I'm probably biased, of course, considering Pegasus and all. But yeah, and actually, oh, you know what? Okay, I don't think I've ever shared this before, and I'm fairly certain that it was a combination of liking Chibiusa, and this is totally off topic, but this might be interesting for some people that like my work and everything. Between liking Chibiusa as a character, and also I think I was being intrigued by the rumors and or not rumors, but like the little bits of information that I had about Dragon Ball GT at the time. It had not come out in the U.S. yet, so my only experience was with the the bootleg crappy fan sub VHS tapes that my friend would show me, which I've talked about extensively in many Kirblog's before, of course. I actually had in a really early version of Balancing Act. Those of you who don't know, it's an old, long-standing IP of mine that I want to do as like a movie someday. And there's a character in it who is very heavily based on me, looks like me and everything. And I had in an early version of that a character that was literally just like, oh, this is an alternate universe version of him from the past. So it's like mini Chris, like with Mini Moon and all that, or like, and it was that same kind of dynamic. Except in this case, it wasn't like, oh, it's my future child. It's me from the past and like learning from me in the future kind of crap or whatever, that whole thing. So that's kind of what that was inspired by. And of course that ended up not, being integrated anyway, but, yeah, so that was a little moment in my creative history of just like, oh, like this is something I took from Sailor Moon that I really liked or whatever because I thought it was cute. But anyway, that aside, yeah. So when S was airing, I was like, oh, this is cool, and I was kind of beginning to follow the plot and everything, and I was really intrigued by the fact that Sailor Saturn was also like the kind of ultimate villain of that arc and everything with Mistress Nine and the Messiah of Silence and all that. And also the thing that really struck me about it that kind of got me like, okay, now I think I'm going to continue watching this, because like I remember like when I watched Digimon and I reached the end of Adventure 02, and it was like, and then they all grow up and they have families together and have kids and blah blah blah, and I'm like, okay, cool, that's a good ending point. I'm going to stop watching now, even though I know Tamers is great. I should watch Tamers at some point, and I know. But yeah, I was thinking about quitting by the end of S, but then I stayed with it because I loved the ending. I loved the idea of, the main character doesn't want to kill the lead villain because the lead villain isn't actually a villain, and they want to somehow find a way to protect them and turn them over to the side of good or whatever, restore them back to the form that they're supposed to be, which then, results in Hotaru eventually becoming a baby and resetting herself or whatever happened there, and then the fact that Uranus and Neptune kind of have at it with Sailor Moon, getting on her case about like, you put the entire world in danger, for the sake of one person that you liked or whatever, and I'm like, oh no, just because she had this relationship with Chibiusa and everything. And I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, that's not a theme that I often get to see in other cartoons that I'm watching right now. So that really captured me. And then I saw a pretty good, not everything, but a pretty good majority after that, funnily enough, of Sailor Moon Supers. That happened to be the season that I saw the most amount of, because kind of like I said, by that point, I'd seen enough where, okay, I know who all the main characters are. I know what the sort of, I guess, formula of the show, as people often say, is. And I'm into this. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to actually keep watching as much of this as I can. And, so I caught a good majority of it. And once again, with the villains and everything, I immediately fell in love with the Dead Moon Circus. I loved the Amazon trio so much. They were so funny and awful and disgusting and ridiculous to me. And I was like, okay, I really like these guys. So they actually were another further reason as to why, like, beyond the thing I mentioned with the S finale, they were another thing that like just kept me going with it, because I'm like, oh, I love these slimy bastards and what they're doing every episode and everything. So then kind of following along with that and seeing where it was going, and also learning about the Pegasus stuff. And because I'd grown to like Chibiusa as a character, I thought it was interesting that the kind of the formula had shifted in a way that I felt was interesting, because by that point I knew the premise of each thing. Where like, okay, the villains are looking for the MacGuffin of this season that involves them having to pick on random citizens that all happen to be in Japan, because that's only ever where they happen to go. And and then they have to find this thing, and then there will be a transformation and a new power up, and then they have to find the plot device MacGuffin thing and whatever. But the fact that they make it clear to the audience in basically the first or second episode, Chibiusa is the one who is holding the MacGuffin, which is Pegasus / the Golden Crystal / the Golden Mirror that leads to Pegasus and all that, and Helios and all that. The fact that they made it apparent to the audience and like consistently, that's where Pegasus is, that's where he's hiding, and that's what all the villains are looking for, and Chibiusa holds that secret, to a certain extent anyway. That was cool to me too, because by that point it's like, okay, even though I didn't really follow that much of the previous seasons, I knew enough to get that like this is already subverting it a little bit. It's still the formula, but it's being executed in a way where it's like, yeah, but what the truth is, and that mounts the tension of the other good guys and bad guys don't. And so like that makes it kind of interesting in terms of like seeing where it's going and like how their searches progressing and everything. And I'm like, okay, I already liked that sort of change in perspective. And the fact that like they spent so much time with just those three villains, which kept it kind of small, because I mean, in the early season, I remember like they would switch to like, one of the new Dark Kingdom Elite Guardian guys, after like only a few episodes, and we get some time to see Nephrite and Zoisite and all that. By the way, I did also know about the characters who had their genders changed and the characters who had their sexual orientations changed. That much was passed around on the internet enough in that era for me to know, like, oh, that's not what's actually happening here right now. And I also could put two and two together when, like, here's a shot of Fisheye, and she's not wearing a shirt, and she doesn't have any boobs. Interesting. Okay, so at least I was able to see past like the wool that was being kind of pulled over my eyes. And yeah, I think that by that point I had a pretty good understanding of, censorship on anime in the US, and, going through my rebellious phase of like, why that sucks. And it does suck and I hate it, but, but I understood what was happening at the very least. Anyway, but whatever. So yeah. So I saw the good majority of that. And then weirdly enough, I didn't finish watching through Supers at the time. I actually never finished seeing the entire thing, unfortunately. So because of that, kind of not to skip ahead too much, but when I eventually got to finish doing that arc, recording-wise, and watching it in Japanese years later, I was kind of like, it was kind of a full circle of like, oh, now I finally get to see the end of the arc that I never got to see in the first place. So then, I guess, years and years go by. There's rumors floating around about, hey, supposedly Sailor Moon might come back and there might be, a redub, and there might be like an uncut new version that's going to happen or whatever. And I'm like, I would love that. In fact, and I remember, actually, funnily enough, I think it was around the time, those of you who don't know, there was a brief period where I dated Megami 33 of Team 4-Star fame. And at the time, she was doing Sailor Moon Abridged with her friends, which also, funnily enough, I cameoed in a couple episodes of. As like just little bit characters. I can't even remember what I did, but I remember like at the time I was talking with her friends about, we were hearing rumors about how that might have been a thing. And this is like, this is 10 years ago. This is like, I think like 2008 or 9 or something, a long time ago. So even back then we were hearing rumors about it. But then nothing kind of came up about it. And then, of course, eventually Sailor Moon Crystal was coming along, and that was a big deal for people, which, by the way, on another side note, I really need to continue watching the rest of that. Jordan Lasko, one of my background artists on Tome, she and I were starting to watch a bunch of episodes of it, and then we kind of never finished like going through the rest of it. I want to, because my intention originally, like way back, was I wanted to do like a 90s Sailor Moon versus Sailor Moon Crystal, like kind of comparison discussion Kirblog with Jordan, but I need to actually go through and watch all of Crystal, which I know I will eventually, so give it time, and I will eventually do that. But nonetheless, this is just focused mainly on the 90s one. But yeah, and then shortly after I moved to LA, flashing forward another several years, so this was I think the summer of 2014, yeah, when I moved, and I went to Anime Expo that summer. I went to the very first Viz Media Sailor Moon panel, and I remember going into the audience, and I met up with Ben Diskin and Lucian Dodge and a couple other folks, and they revealed the main cast of Sailor Moon. They brought up the 5 main Sailor Guardians and Luna and Tuxedo Mask. Little funny side note: Robbie and I have joked about this on panels previously. So I had briefly met, not in person, but I had met Robbie Damon's, who's the voice of Tuxedo Mask, on Twitter, like, because we were both in an anime movie that Stephanie Shea, voice of Sailor Moon, directed, no, actually I think she cast it, and then Michael Center Nicholas directed it, if I'm remembering right. We were in this movie called Patema Inverted, and we were both in that, and that was the first time I'd heard of Robbie, and Robbie was kind of beginning to make the scene, and he was working on a bunch of stuff in LA and everything. I think he was doing, what was that show on Nickelodeon? Crap. Andrew Dickman worked on it. I can't remember. Sorry, Andrew. Anyway, but we had met, and then he was at Anime Expo because, of course, he was doing the panel, and he didn't tell me what he was doing, of course. But I was like, hey, I forget who said which first, but one of us was like, are you going to the Sailor Moon panel? And I'm like, yeah. And then Robbie was like, yeah, I'll see you there. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't even put 2 and 2 together. He didn't, he didn't even really explicitly say anything to me because he was being a good boy and not breaking contract, obviously. But I get there, and I sit in the audience with Ben and some of the others, and then as they go up there, I remember I like texted, I like Twitter DM'd him later, and I was like, you sneaky son of a bitch, I can't believe you. So and yeah, I was so happy and excited about seeing friends of mine and colleagues and other people get to be in the show. It was a dream cast of just some of the best people. Studiopolis, I've often said, before I started to get to work with them, this was years before, and I've always said this, I'll stick by this. Studiopolis does some of the best dubs out there. I have loved everything that they work on virtually, and I think they have access to some of the best people. Some of their Netflix dubs as of late, I think, should be a clear indication of that, with Baki and Ultraman, which just came out like this past week. Yeah, they do amazing stuff. So I was very happy that Viz went with them to do this dub production. And then as I kind of promised myself, I started getting back into the show again. Of course, in fact, for those of you who perhaps don't know, the entire series is on Hulu. The Japanese episodes, I believe, are for free, and a bunch of the dub episodes are I think, for subscribers. So as they were putting the episodes up, I was watching them all in both languages. I started watching through the entire series front to back in both languages because I really wanted to actually properly get into the series by that point. And it was really cool. It was interesting kind of seeing, first of all, a lot of episodes that I had missed. It was weird because, okay, actually, so by that point, because I had gotten to know the Sailor Moon abridged people at the time, the seeing the season 1 episodes again was like very surreal for me because I had this weird different context of seeing them the last time, just as like in parody form, basically. So it was kind of, I had this odd sort of nostalgia for them in like 2 different ways. And then eventually when I got to the R stuff, that was completely new territory for me because I hadn't really seen, other than the filler stuff with the alien twins, I hadn't seen any of that before, so that was cool. And then getting back into, of course, S was great. And then, of course, along came the pipe, along down the pipe came, there we go, the auditions for Sailor Moon Supers. Prior to this, I had gotten in with Studiopolis. I had started working on Terraform Mars, of course, which was the first show that I did for them as the main character of a show. So no pressure or anything. And then the auditions came up. Oh, and actually, okay, I remember this too. I almost forgot this part. I made it a life's goal to at least get to audition for the Amazon trio because I loved those characters so goddamn much that and of course I knew that, especially auditioning for it at Studiopolis, I knew that the competition was going to be really fierce. So I tried to, I set my expectations low. I was like, okay, if I can at least get to audition for those characters, I will be happy. So they sent Tiger's Eye, Hawk's Eye, Fish's Eye, and Pegasus. And I was like, oh, okay. So I read for all 4 of them and did my absolute goddamn best I possibly could on each of them. And then just was like, okay. And that was it. That was the dream. And we'll see what happens. Whoever they go to, they're all going to be amazing actors. So I'm sure they'll be in great hands, which they were, because the Amazon trio went to fucking fantastic actors. John Eric and Mike Yurchak and, of course, Eric Kimmerer. Yeah. So then, out of the blue, I get another audition, a callback audition, which is, for those of you who don't know, a callback audition is when you are in the running for a character and they want to hear you do some additional material, maybe play around with the character a little bit more. They might have a note for you, which is what happened with me. So I get a note back, and the casting director, Jamie Simone, was like, hey, so they want you to do the voice that you did for your Fish's Eye audition for Pegasus. Now, when I auditioned, and I'm not even, this is just what I did. I'm not, doing an impression of Eric's way better, characterization, or the previous version of it or whatever. I didn't try to do. I didn't use any kind of reference to the old dub or anything when I did these. I just did my own thing based on the Japanese sound. But when I tried to voice Fish's Eye, because they also had some separate material for when he's pretending to be a woman. So I'm not even going to try to attempt it again, but I really try to take out all of the bass in my voice and just make him as high-pitched as humanly possible. I can't even do it. But they had me try to go that high and that young for Pegasus because the specific note, I remember they sent me a clip of Helios when he was speaking to Prince Endymion and Mamoru in one of the later, one of the final episodes of Supers. And they were like, we specifically want to make sure that he sounds younger than Tuxedo Mask. That is the goal with what we're trying to aim for with this character. And I'm like, okay, got it. So I did another take, and I went as young and as high as I possibly could while also maintaining the character. And then I booked the part. And I went in, and I could not have been more nervous. In fact, at the time, I had never been more scared going into a job than I had been for Sailor Moon. By that point, actually, by the way, I want to give a special shout out for multiple reasons. Charlene Ingram, who is the master of ceremonies at all of the big Sailor Moon panels that Viz has done. She no longer works for Viz. She's now enjoying a lovely position over at Capcom in marketing, and she's awesome. Much love to her. She was the person who hosted all of the big Sailor Moon panels at Anime Expo and a lot of other conventions. And I would go up to her at cons once in a while and be like, hey, I really, really, really would love an opportunity to try out. And so she was always like, here, talk to some of these people and see if you can reach out to these people and everything. And I'm like, okay, and then just kind of by coincidence, I happened to have gotten in with Studiopolis, and by that point I was on their radar and they let me audition for the show, which was great. But yeah, and then as I kind of continued forward with it, she treated me really, really well and was so wonderful and so nice to me. And she also was very much responsible for getting me in with a lot of the conventions that I ended up going to, as a result of some of the Sailor Moon promotional stuff that I ended up doing throughout 2017 and a little bit of 2018 as well. So a major, major shout out to her. Shar, if you ever happen to listen to this, you probably won't, but thank you for being so kind to me, seriously. So I went in, and we started doing the first couple episodes. So we had an initial batch of a few episodes. By this point, also Erica Mendez, who's the voice of Sailor Uranus, was writing the show, which was great. And as I often do with a lot of the shows where I book characters of significance, if I can, I will try to watch the Japanese episodes ahead of time. So I did. I tried to go back in and rewatch a lot of the episodes that I had, especially the ones that I hadn't seen back in the day, just to get kind of a clear understanding of what they were doing with the characters and everything. And amongst some of my favorites, kind of going through all these, Meeting of Destiny, The Night Pegasus Dances, the first episode, just kind of getting everything situated and sort of finding the voice and everything. Catch Pegasus, The Amazon's Trap. Anything with Naru and Umino coming back made me happy, because Ben Diskin being hilarious as Umino is always fun. Love that. Watching the Amazon trio go in and do all their dumb bullshit every episode, and and with their various disguises and sob stories and trying to flirt with all these different men and women and everything. Drive to the Heavens, the dream car fueled with love, where Hawkeye's skull gets cracked by something or whatever with his stupid beard and his mismatched purple hair or whatever. The one that I really took to, and I was so happy, Eric did such a good job on Fish's Eye, seriously. Eric, if you hear this, you did a good goddamn job, dude. Shadow of Evil, the trio's last chance, and Mirrors of Dreams, the Amazon's last stage. Fish's Eye's little kind of storyline in just those stretch of episodes between flirting with Mamoru, continuing to try to desperately search for the Pegasus mirror and everything. Like this was a different kind of thing where it's like the boss is like threatening, like, if you don't get this, you're gonna die. And you're never, and your dreams are never gonna, you have no dreams, by the way. So this is the best you can hope to get is for you to find Pegasus, so you can actually just maintain these crappy human forms that I gave you, because you're actually just a bunch of crappy circus animals. And this whole thing where, like, even though they're all awful people, and Fish's Eye is like this rambunctious jerk, like Usagi takes pity on him and is like just very kind and nice and friendly to him in this this time where he's very clear. She doesn't even know what the hell's going on, but she's incredibly nice to him and offers being kind and everything. And then this kind of back and forth of, like, then Fish's Eye actually finds out the twist of the show. She finds out that Pegasus is within Chibiusa, and but then having this sort of back and forth of not actually wanting to to help the villains in the long run, and then they just send a clown to go and kill them all or whatever. And I hadn't seen this episode in probably 10 years. And then when I went in and I rewatched the Japanese one to prep, it like made me cry all over again. It like really affected me because I loved those characters so goddamn much, and their final moment where even though they're dying, they have dream mirrors, and it's like, oh, we really were human after all. We really did have beautiful dreams after all. Oh my God. Like, I was crying. And then even I remember, I think when I went in to record the episode, I think like during that last part when I'm like talking to them and saying like, like, you have beautiful dreams after all, you'll be fine. And then their spirits come to live in the little crystal forest with me and everything. I was tearing up a little bit too. And I was like, oh my God, this show is still affecting me like that. It's crazy. And then of course we have the Amazonas quartet, which I remember as a kid, I was like, I don't like these girls as much because they're not as funny as the Amazon trio, regardless of how hot they are. But I think it certainly helped that they were all now voiced by friends of mine. Of course, Xanthi Huynh and Erika Ishii, Erica Lindbeck, and Cassandra Morris, who all did lovely jobs with them. Everybody did a great job. And Zirconia was great, of course. You can recognize her very clearly, of course, if you hear her. And Laura Post as Nehelenia was amazing. So having this second half villains was still really cool, getting to see that. And then some other ones. Overcome your fear, the jump to freedom. Can't believe that Kyusuke fucking got his own episode with Kyle Hebert as this like 10-year-old boy character in a magical girl show, gets his own episode, and kind of seeing a little bit of a semi-human side of the Amazoness girls. And we had and then the two-parter of Pegasus Disappears, Wavering Friendship, and Pegasus' Secret, the boy who protects the dream world. So and then actually I'm going to remind myself real quick. I want to talk about the movie after this because that's something that's important to me too. So I know that with fandom, people make a lot of really stereotypical, easy jokes about the relationship between Pegasus and Chibiusa. Having seen it now 3 different times, between seeing it back in the day with the old dub, watching the Japanese version again, and then recording it, I actually think that their relationship is very, very sweet and wonderful and innocent. I don't find it to be sexualized or like weird or creepy in any way. I think that unfortunately a lot of people, and this is not to be insulting, this is just to point out what I think might have been the source of it. I think it's because of Pegasus's voice. Not just the fact that I think that probably the previous cast of the old dub maybe didn't quite have the foresight to know that the character was meant to be because he's meant to be younger than Tuxedo Mask. To me, I place him, and this is how I chose to play him, around like maybe 12 or 13. And he's very tall too, which also doesn't help. The size difference between him and Chibiusa. And also even his Japanese voice is lower than you might imagine. So I think that because of that, it's like, I get it. I get where that comes from, but I actually think that their relationship is built entirely on this really, really beautiful sense of trust and openness. And, because throughout the whole season, and it kind of comes to a head in these couple of episodes here, throughout, the whole season, like Pegasus is this very hurt, distrustful and shy character that like only marginally barely trusts Chibiusa because he sees this kind of this sense of innocence and kindness in her that he can place some kind of faith in. It's like, okay, I will be safe here. I feel safe when I'm around you, so I'm going to place the minimal amount of trust that I have left right now after what's happened to me with Nehelenia and everything within you. So and then when that trust wavers, and, she feels like, well, what you've never told me anything about yourself. And, he's like, well, you just have to believe in me kind of thing. And, kind of the challenge that they go through and everything. And then eventually when he comes back, and then it's tested, in the very next episode with, the age swap thing between Chibiusa and Usagi, and then the fact that like that kind of interferes with their relationship because it's like her dream is kind of temporarily granted by, the power of the Dark Moon because of Palapala's orb thing and her magic or whatever. And then the fact that she gives up that, kind of superficial sort of dream of wanting to become older because she thinks that will make Pegasus see her in some more attractive way or whatever. And he's like, I don't care about that and everything. And then, they share the kiss and he reveals his true identity as Helios and everything. Which, little side note, I tried to have a bit of a distinction, not too much, but a bit of a distinction between where Pegasus is really soft and quiet and, lost and confused and has the sense of, being a little scared and everything. And then Helios is the same vocally, but he's a little more confident and he speaks clearly and knows exactly who he is. So I tried to kind of have a little bit of a distinction between the two of them, since that was the first episode where Helios shows up in some sort of, illusionary form, revealing a little bit of who he is and everything. And then we had some more fun ones after that. Of course, we had Dream to be an Adult, the Amazoness' Confusion, the Amazoness Quartet not being jerks for once and kind of getting to know them as as people, and seeing them work together with the Guardians and everything. And also in that episode, I got to live out a little fantasy of mine of I got to be one of the monster of the week characters. I was the bitty bitty catfish dude monster in that episode. It's a Dream to Be an Adult, the Amazoness Confusion. If any of you guys have caught that was me as him. That was a lot of fun. I also tried to burp as the the catfish like lower half thing. I didn't quite work out so well. Oh, I almost forgot about this. We actually also a little bit later, I think it was still before the second half came about with the Amazoness quartet and everything. There was a point where I remember we actually, and I'm glad we did this. We went back and we re-recorded a bunch of stuff for the earlier episodes that I did. I think the first like 4 or 5 episodes that I recorded already. We had gone back and redid all of my lines because we wanted to push him just a little bit younger than where he was at, which I think was good. So because I had my previous performance as a reference, I was able to go back in and basically just kind of fix what I had done and aim him a little bit younger. Another funny thing was during the second half too, we had a lot of alternative takes of certain pronunciations of things. I remember I think I did both Helios and Elios and Helios for saying my own name, and then I think for oh god, what is it that we went with ultimately? I think we went with Elysium. Yes, we went with Elysium for the final choice, but I remember I think I also did Elysium, like Elysium, and then like Illusion, which was like the Japanese pronunciation. So we did like a bunch of different lines with 3 different pronunciations of the same like term. And there might have even been a different one too, maybe like Crystal Carillon or Crystal Carillion, something like that. But yeah, so there was some fun trial and error with that, and then eventually by like the end of the show, we had the definitive pronunciation of those things. Stepping away from Supers for just a moment, also I wanted to talk a little bit about the Sailor Moon Supers movie, which was one of the movies that I had seen. I think actually back in the day, I believe it was the only of the 3 Sailor Moon movies that I had actually seen before, because all of the other ones, I think I just happened, the other 2 that is, I hadn't seen them. I just hadn't happened to have caught them anywhere. I know that they all aired on TV at some point, and I caught the Supers movie like at some point on Cartoon Network. They aired it either on Toonami or otherwise. I remember really, really liking that movie a lot. Something about it was just like a fun, like cool adventure to me. And like, again, because I like Chibiusa, I liked that it had a lot of emphasis on her. And it was fun having it was interesting having a different sort of perspective, because like Pearl becomes like her sort of, semi-love interest in that for like a brief moment. And I was like, oh, this is just like Pegasus if he was like a little like 5-year-old or whatever. Or I don't even know how, I mean, I guess he's immortal. He's like a fairy thing. In fact, I almost felt like that was like the thing they were going for, is like, what if we made Pegasus like closer looking to Chibiusa's age, and we just, because that's the thing, is a lot of the villains, they tend to just look kind of like alternate versions of characters from other things that already exist. Because even like Fiore from the Sailor Moon R movie, the character that Ben Diskin played, like he just looks kind of like a fusion between the Makaiju twins from the fucking Sailor Moon R filler stuff and everything. So I was like, okay, whatever. But I recently picked that up and got that again because I wanted to see it after all these years. It's beautifully animated, has great atmosphere, and it has a good kind of fun sense of adventure and everything. I actually kind of wish that it was longer. For some reason, I expected it to be longer than I remembered it being, but it wasn't actually. And that was a little disappointing. It's also very, very simple. Simpler than I remember it being, but I was like, sure, okay. But it's a fun little side venture. I was sad, unfortunately, I missed it when it was in theaters for a little while, the Fathom Events screening stuff, which was really cool. I'm very happy that that happened in the first place. But yeah, it was a fun little trip down memory lane. It was cool seeing it again for the first time in years. And yeah. But yeah, then getting back to the episodes, the 6-part finale is the coolest shit ever. Like, I actually think thus far, it's because I have not seen Sailor Moon Stars before, so I don't know what comes next in terms of the story material. I know who some of the characters are, but I don't know like the full extent of like everything about the story and everything. So Yeah, so thus far, I think that this might be my favorite. Or no, you know what? Maybe I think it's like half and half with both S and Supers. I think have really cool finale, like final battle sort of stretches of episodes and everything. You know, everything that I got to do with the last little bits of Pegasus, going through all of the. Oh, another little fun thing I got to do is I got to be some of the circus freak characters that are part of the Dead Moon Circus. That was another little thing that I was hoping I would get to do just as part of like, you know, little bit one-off character voices or whatever. I was hoping I could get to do that, and I did, so that was nice. Yeah, and then Helios finally coming to pass and getting to do some more of the actiony, like yelling stuff at the very end when like things get you know, more intense and all that, and fighting Nehelenia. That was really fun getting to do that, and the really dramatic moments between Chibiusa and Helios as well in those last moments. And also then again just seeing the end, because I think back in the day I stopped. I just happened to miss. I know that they aired and that they were dubbed, but I missed getting to see the last few episodes. So I think the last one I saw was when they find the golden mirror in Chibiusa, and they're like, oh, that's where Pegasus is. And then I never saw the last couple after that. So watching them in Japanese and then getting to go and record them was so awesome. And yeah, and the final battle, especially between Sailor Moon and Zirconia / Nehelenia, like that real kind of you know, the reveal of you know what Zirconia really is in terms of like Nehelenia's kind of reflection, and you know, not wanting to you know, embrace the fact that she becomes old and her beauty is fading, and etc. That was awesome and beautifully animated, and you know, them falling down the buildings and everything, and my scene with Mamoru and in the that sort of, you know, dream state and everything, and then of course my final moments, and you know, I'll never forget you, Chibiusa, and all that. You know, I know he doesn't actually come back later, but yeah, that was my experience, and it was a tremendous honor. I got to do a couple interviews that were on the Blu-ray box sets. If any of you guys picked those up, which I would much appreciate. I did some interviews with some of the other cast. I did one with Sandy Fox, who's the voice of Chibiusa. Shout out to Sandy Fox. She got me a lovely little Pegasus T-shirt and a little toy of him. She's so great. And also for the what's it? I had one interview with myself, like just by myself answering questions. I got to do Anime Expo. I got to do Otakon. I did a few other ones as well, thanks to Shar again as well. That was great. And I had what was it? Anime NYC was another one. That was awesome too. Yeah, I had such a wonderful experience getting to be part of the show. I'm really happy that I became a fan of it as a result of this really good new dub that like I was into even before I got to be part of it, and that all my friends got to be part of as well. And you know, they've joined in on the cast and everything too. It's just it's so great, and I'm excited for a lot of the things to come. I'm excited for Stars, which is I know coming up very soon. They've announced that. I have a feeling that probably at AX this year they'll have some announcements about. I don't know that for certain, but you know, I'll be on the lookout for that. And also we haven't had any new news about it, but I know that there is going to be a Sailor Moon Crystal a 2-part movie that is encompassing the Supers arc. So I hope that I will be back for that, because the cast has been consistent between both the 90s redub and Crystal, as far as I've seen. So hopefully I will get to do that, because that would be really nice. And I'm excited to see kind of like I guess a more serious take on, you know, an already pretty serious story from you know, the 90s version and everything. I don't know of what the differences are between the manga version and otherwise, but I would love to get to do another version of that. I think that'd be awesome. So, you know, here's hoping that that'll happen. But yeah, that's kind of my recounting with my experiences of all of Sailor Moon and everything, both personally and first hand, second hand, third hand, fourth and fifth hand. I have a lot of hands apparently. What am I? I'm a champ. So. Yeah, that's about all I have to say. So this was a fun little first Sailor Moon Animepril Kirblog for the year. Thank you all. I have plans for what I'm gonna do for the remaining ones for the rest of the month, But if you guys have any other suggestions of ones that I haven't covered before, and hopefully if they're shows that I've seen, let me know. I'll have a list of, at the end here, a card that goes to the anime Kirblog playlist that I have, all of the other shows that I've already covered. If you want to see ones that I've already done, just in case, since you don't repeat answers. And I'm hoping to get a couple of interview guests. We'll see if I can still get them this month. I don't know for certain yet, but I have some plans, so stay tuned for that. And so thanks a bunch. Please do support checking out it. Just in general, if you've listened to this and you still haven't seen it, if you haven't seen the new dub of Sailor Moon, please go check it out. It's incredibly good, and my views do not represent Viz Media. It's better. It's purely my opinion, but take my word for it. I'm very happy with how it turned out. I really enjoyed it before I was involved with it. I know I'm going to sound biased, obviously, but I think it's fantastic. Everybody did such a good job on it, and it's worth checking out. So please, it's on Hulu. There's tons of Blu-rays of it. It's great, and I hope you'll enjoy it, and especially the uncharted territory of Sailor Moon Stars coming soon, possibly this year. We'll see. And so I'll catch you all in the next one. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you all in your beautiful dreams. It's not creepy at all, I promise.